Hey everyone, how you doing? And welcome back to the channel for the second movie review coming out this week. And of course today I'm going to be talking about Paddington in Peru, directed by Dougal Wilson, starring Hugh Bonneville, Emily Mortimer, Julie Walters, Jim Broadbent, Carla Toos, Olivia Colman, Antonio Banderas, and of course Ben Whishaw as Paddington Bear himself. And this follows Paddington as he goes on a quest to find his Aunt Lucy, who disappeared into the Peruvian jungle, and it takes him and the Browns to go out of their way to find her on this third adventure in the Paddington franchise. Now, I don't know if I've had the delightful opportunity to talk about the Paddington films on this channel yet, because I remember seeing the first one a long time ago and I liked it enough, but when the second one came out, I was going on about that for the entire year back in 2018, and even though I didn't list it as my #1 film of the year at that time, it is easily the best film from 2018. And I think it's one of the greatest films ever made. I mean, how can you not love Paddington 2, right? It's just such a perfectly crafted family film that hits all the right emotional beats and leaves me weeping at the end. I mean, I can't say that about many films in its vein. It was such a delightful surprise for the best movie of the year to come out in January, nonetheless. Like, that's insane, and I don't know if that's ever going to happen again, but that was certainly the case with that film. So obviously expectations for Paddington in Peru were pretty high, but I also had to temper them a little bit because the director, Paul King, was not in the director's chair this time around, and that of course was newcomer in his directorial debut, Dougal Wilson, even though I do think that Paul King has a writing credit here with Simon Barnaby. So, you know, there was still some hope, and then of course Sally Hawkins exited the project and Emily Mortimer took her place as Mrs. Brown, which was a little interesting to say the least. It's kind of like what they did with Katie Holmes in Batman Begins and then Maggie Gyllenhaal in The Dark Knight, except this is the third movie in, right? So I think there were signs that were kind of pointing this to be perhaps not as quality as the previous two entries. And I did watch the first one again a couple years ago, and I really liked that one. It definitely holds up a lot better than the first time I saw it. And what I have to say about Paddington in Peru, it's a fun adventure. You know, the fact that this is not anywhere near as good as, of course, its predecessor, but even the first one, really is not a great sign that 2025 is off to a good start at all. I mean, there's many other reasons why this year is pretty horrible, but the fact that a Paddington movie is somewhat of a disappointment, I mean, come on. I mean, that's the harbinger of everything. And I really do think, despite all that, there is a lot to love about this film. And of course, the humor is still there, even though I don't think it's anywhere near as witty or tactful as it was in the previous two films, especially Paddington 2. Even though I definitely think that everybody's bringing their A-game here, Emily Mortimer slots into the role of Mrs. Brown quite nicely. I did think that she was a good replacement for Sally Hawkins, and Hugh Bonneville's always great in these movies, and I really think they have a lot of funny gags with his character, being like a risk assessment manager, and kind of like what they have to do with him going into the Peruvian jungle. That's fun, and I really like his arc in the film. But the kids in this film, they don't really get a whole lot to do. Even in the last one, they set up their little, you know, arcs and, you know, kind of like these gags that pay off in a big, big way when it comes to the climax. And I think here, all of those beats, one, don't feel as fleshed out, but two, they just feel a lot more televised. Like, I think you kind of know what you're getting in for this time around. And I think you really do feel the absence of Paul King, because he really steered the ship in such a precise direction. And I don't think that this movie is quite at that level. It isn't as surprising, it isn't as clever, but it is still a lot of fun. And Ben Whishaw, man, I mean, you know, he's always going to be perfect in the role as Paddington Bear, and he's just as endearing and adorable as he always has been, of course. And I also have to mention probably the two biggest standouts. from this cast, and this should come as no surprise, but of course I am talking about Antonio Banderas and Olivia Colman, and yeah, they eat up every scene they're in. Like, they are having so much fun with these roles, and I think that goes for all the people who kind of come into this series from movie to movie, but they really are having the time of their life here, and I think Antonio Banderas especially, like, I think he really elevates this movie to another level, and just the little quirks and facial expressions that Olivia Colman gives her character in this are just absolutely hysterical, and I really do appreciate their presence in this film, and making it something more than what it could have been lesser than, if that makes sense. And I really am not here dogging on this movie at all, because it is a delightful adventure, and there's a lot of great homages. There are a lot of great jokes throughout the course of this film, but unfortunately, I just don't think it even, comes close to being as coherent or surprising as the past two entries in this series. And that really is disappointing, because look, I'm always going to be down for another Paddington adventure, right? But I really do hope, and this is no disrespect to Dougal Wilson at all, and I really do hope he goes on to have a good career in the film industry, because, he certainly didn't do a bad job by any means, but I think having Paul King at the front and center of this movie is what the sequel should have going forward. Because, look, yes, this is better than Wonka, I would say. So I find it kind of funny that he chose to do that instead of this. I mean, maybe there was more money in it. I can't really blame him. But I really do think that he is the key ingredient to these movies' success, despite everybody still, maintaining the same level of proficiency and commitment. I really do think going forward, I would love to see Paul King come back and steer the ship around, because as fun as this movie is, it does feel a bit inconsequential compared to what came before that. And on that note, I'm going to give Paddington in Peru a strong 7 out of 10. I mean, this really did come close to me even saying I really like this film, but it was just a tad too predictable and not as fleshed out as it could have been. The emotional beats certainly don't hit anywhere near as hard as the second film. And yeah, I still think you should check this out. It's a fun family adventure that you should absolutely take your kids to if you have them. And, you're always going to enjoy a Paddington movie. There's not a single bad movie in that franchise. And so I think this one, just might not reach the greatness of the others. But to risk the sake of being absolutely redundant, let me know what you think about Paddington in Peru down in the comments below, and please smash the like button if you like this review of this film. The reviews are going to slow down a little bit as of late, because I am going to be working my damnedest this next week to finish my video for the top 10 films of 2024, and also the top 5 albums of 2024, which should be coming somewhere next week. I don't want to lock it in, because, this is just an insanely busy time for me, as you can see me getting this review up this late as it is. This weather, let's just say, is not helping. So, anyways, I hope you stick around for that and so much more, and I will talk to you guys very soon.